Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 81, Just Get Started. Well, first of all, welcome to 2021. A new year, a new start. Hopefully a better year than 2020 was for most of us. So this month on the podcast, it's all about focusing on the power of possible again. And this time, it's about just getting to it. Getting started, pulling the trigger, and not procrastinating anymore. We'll talk more about motivation, your obstacles, and getting very action-focused. A lot of us took time in 2020 to worry, to obsess, to gain insights, to make some very important decisions in our heart as we learn some powerful lessons about what matters. I understand we're at the peak of a very scary time in the pandemic. And I know some of you may feel like you need to wait to press go on some things. But I don't really think so. I think being empowered and resilient means finding what we can do today. What can we get started with? What can we begin? Rather than focusing on what we can't do yet because of safety concerns. Every season has something for us, something to teach us, something to give to us. So let's take advantage of that concept. All right, so remember last month, we were talking about why alignment matters, in alignment with who you really are. It means not fighting your authentic self. It means getting things straight with you, which raises your confidence. It lowers your anxiety, lowers your feelings of depression, and gives you a greater degree of life satisfaction. So we talked about that. And if you haven't listened to that episode, you might want to go back. It'll help this one make more sense. And especially we explored your why. What your values are and what your beliefs are and what matters most to you and how that can greatly impact your motivation and help you feel more on purpose, more intentional, and more glued together. So let's talk about why sometimes it's hard to get started. A lot of times it's our perception. It's what we've heard of what something is going to be like, an experience or completing a task or both. It's what we've experienced in the past. Maybe it didn't go so well. Maybe we didn't do so well. So we're not really too amped to get started doing it again because it's whatever we attach to it and what our perceptions are. And sometimes we're not incorrect. I mean, some tasks are less enjoyable than others for good reason. But I want you to think about what is attached to it. I also think it's really important to think about how you feel. Like if you feel like crap because you've been putting something off, it's really going to be hard to want to get started on that because you already feel pretty awful. So my encouragement is to do some positive reframing. You don't have to lie to yourself, of course not. But maybe saying things like, it's going to feel a hell of a lot better to finally tackle this and get this done. I will be so glad to have this behind me. Those kinds of statements, which are true, right? And they're not about shaming yourself and beating yourself up or wallowing in guilt. So our perceptions, whatever we have attached to the idea of doing that task, matter. They really matter. And the idea of how do we get started? Can we get started? We're not even sure where to start sometimes. And I think what can fuel that procrastination, we've talked about this before, is fear, 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 right? Procrastination is all about fear. It's about maybe I have perfectionism, and so then I'm paralyzed because I either do it perfectly or not at all. And if I'm not sure I can see an easy road to perfect, like it's easy, it's quick, I can do it, I may hold back because the only other option I see is failure or horrible or awful. Learning how to say, you know what? It matters to get it done. Let me just get it done and do a decent enough job. Procrastination means resistance. It means Like we just talked about, maybe these tasks aren't fun. I don't want to do it. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be time consuming. And I'm not going to get any instant gratification, let's call it. On things that we don't see immediate payoff, our internal immaturity may resist wanting to do that thing as opposed to something we can get a quick fix off of. Maturity rather says, I may not see the fruit of this for a long time, but it needs to happen. Another reason why we procrastinate is we want that very false BS sense of control. Control is an illusion, but we pretend all the time that we have it, right? And don't tell us otherwise. Because it's, I'll show you, I'll wait till the effing last minute to get that done. And of course, we're the ones who pay the price, and we know that. It's so stressful. We don't do as good of a job. We regret not having started sooner, right? In fact, there was some research. Timothy, I'm going to mispronounce his name. I want to say Peichel and his colleagues at Carleton University, they did a research study where they had students wear pagers to collect data, and they would page them throughout the day for a week or two to find out, what was going on, had they gotten to that task, and how they were doing, what they were feeling. And what they realized is that, when we put off a task, and we all know this, we actually feel worse. We don't feel better. It doesn't do us any favors. But then once we get started, it's not as bad as we thought. That's what the research showed. It said the students said, if they hadn't put it off, if they had just started, they would have realized, they would have been grateful for having started earlier and that it wasn't as bad and it felt so much better getting started. So it's our perception of what getting started means. I have often said on here that something else has got to be a lot bigger than my fear of getting started that becomes more important. You see it in the epic movies all the time. They wait, and then here comes the monster coming at them, and all of a sudden they scramble. That's kind of how we are sometimes. Something else becomes a higher priority or more important than our fear, our resistance, our control, our shame, whatever is holding us back and keeping us from pulling the trigger. So just getting started. So one of the great benefits of getting started, even if you're not really sure you have your plan all laid out yet, or how you're going to do steps 5, 6, and 7, your perceptions are going to change. That's what's really cool. They're possibly going to change about the task itself. Maybe, like we said, it wasn't as hard as you thought, so you were nicely surprised. You actually may, and don't tell anyone, enjoy some of it, maybe kind of like it. Maybe it was hard, but boy, by getting that done, don't you feel so accomplished? I mean, there's tons of research that shows that anything that's handed to us that we don't actually have to work for, we don't really value, do we? Conversely, when you climb that mountain, boy, you remember that for a long time. The struggle, the journey, the process you had to walk through to get to the top. And maybe we learned something, and maybe they were lessons we learned or learned something new about ourselves or how to do something. Maybe we got better at something and gained some confidence. And our perceptions change about ourselves. Now we can say, hey, I did that, and that means I can do that. And if you got started when you typically procrastinate, you just told your subconscious that you're a different person. At least you're becoming a different person. You're changing your view of self by doing differently. We feel more hope. We feel more healthy control over our lives. It motivates us to do more. Like Mel Robbins says all the time, motivation isn't going to get you started as much as motivation is going to come from getting started. You get started, you see it's possible, you're making it happen, you're making it real, and you've primed the pump. Our perceptions will change about ourselves too, because we can start watching those dominoes fall in our mind's eye. Like a clean home leads to what? I'm going to want to come home. I'm going to want to have people over when we can do that again, right? I'm going to feel less stressed in my home. My home's going to have better value because I took better care of the maintenance on it. And then maybe I can sell that one day. The dominoes keep falling in 52 different directions if we look at something carefully enough. Taking care of my health now means I'll be around for kids and grandkids. Saving a little money each month with interest will help me get to my retirement goals. Focusing on the long-term benefits and the relief that will come. But it takes maturity to see past Friday night, right? Remember that instant gratification we were just talking about? That's what kids want. They don't care about next Tuesday. They're so in the moment, which is wonderful. And as grown-ups, we know by now the consequences of not having forethought and planning. You know, our inner adolescent wants to buy that thing now, eat that thing now, with little thought or maybe a little guilt smothered with lots of rationalization, right? To what the end result could be if we started grabbing some self-discipline from out of some orifice. So our higher self is what we're appealing to in this episode. It's about what do I want long term? It's about what I'm tired of sitting in, living in. I'm tired of status quo. I want it to be different in a very good way. That means you're ready to change. There are the stages of change. Denial, which means I don't even know there's a problem yet. Pre-contemplation. Okay. Like Oprah says, we get the whispers. People mention it. We're like, that's interesting. I'm kind of maybe contemplating it. Then there's contemplation. Like, I'm really thinking about this. I'm like really thinking about it. It's at the front. It's on my mind. I'm talking to people about it. I'm researching some things. I'm looking at what needs to happen to make that happen. Then there's action. Then there's maintenance. So thinking about where you are in terms of change around a particular topic is really helpful, to be honest with ourselves. We're getting ready to be ready to be ready, remember? You know, one of the ways we can really help ourselves get motivated to get started is to get out of fear and into choice, as you often hear me say. And I want you to think about, okay, what are the consequences if I don't complete this task? Or if I don't get started, if I don't start tackling this? I want you to think of both the short-term ones, because there are short-term ones, absolutely, and some long-term ones, which are harder sometimes to maybe want to think about, to maybe want to entertain the idea of, or maybe even more important, right? Like health comes to mind. We may not feel the effects in our 20s of poor nutrition and lack of exercise and lack of sleep, but boy, is that going to catch up with us and matter later in our 50s. Same with saving for retirement, another typical example. If we start saving in our 20s, we'll probably have a better retirement nest egg in our 60s than if we wait until we're 48. So what are the short-term consequences of not working on that thing, of not getting started, of not making those changes? And then how will you feel about yourself? That's the big kicker here. And no rationalizing, by the way. There's no, it'll be better to do it later. No, we're talking about reality. What are the consequences if I don't do this? This is what I call ownership. You're going to feel so much better as you begin owning your choices, because remember, owning your choices means owning the consequences and the benefits. It means both. It's a package deal. See, I think that when we rationalize, we tend to look at things in a vacuum. We're sitting in today like, it's not a big deal if I don't do that today. But then days turn into weeks and into months, and you know what I'm talking about. And we fail to get perspective, like how it impacts the big picture. I think sometimes we're afraid to get real with the impacts of eating unhealthy on our body, our brain, our mood, our self-esteem, our relationships, our medical bills, our kids. Need I go on? I mean, we could take any task or subject or area of change and ripple it out into all the other areas that it's interconnected with. And if we got honest and got real, not morbid, just real, it might get our attention. I mean, that's why oftentimes it takes a big thing happening to scare the crap out of us and change our mind. What we want to work towards is being more proactive and saying, you really don't want to bump up against that reality in the ER before I start taking care of myself. I would prefer to just be healthier and not have that weighing on me. Because here's the thing. We can rationalize and procrastinate and blow stuff off. And in the back of our mind, it's an open app. And it's draining your energy. It's draining your confidence. It's stressful and increases your anxiety. Anybody tells you different, they're lying. Because you know the relief I'm talking about when you finally pull the thing off, when you finally get it done, or at least start tackling it. It feels so much better. It feels so much better because you are honoring what you are saying matters to you. Remember the alignment that we mentioned in the beginning of today's episode and what we talked about last time? That your insides match your outsides. When you say things to yourself or to others saying, I wish I was more organized. And yet, that's not looking real great in your life. You have chaos. There are poor boundaries. There's stuff everywhere. You can't find your keys. You can't find that paper. You overbook yourself. You're tired. You're stressed. Just starting with that example, with a schedule, and start tomorrow. Don't put it off. Start tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow at least I'm not going to put anything more on my plate, you say. Tomorrow, I'm going to get up 5 minutes earlier so I have a clear head and I can get quiet and see what I have to do. And just get started. Start making your outsides match your insides. But do it incrementally. We've talked about that before. Chunk it down. Make it manageable. Set yourself up for possibility and success. Just start, because you know that once you start doing something, it's going to help you feel motivated to do more and to branch out and to expand and do other things. Things that you can't even imagine you would want to do right now. Trust me. I know this. For me, it was beginning to go for walks in the morning. Morning's not my favorite time of day, or it used to not be. And now all that's changed. I really look forward to going for a walk, not just to feel healthier, but to feel more sane, especially during COVID. I really cherish that time outside with fresh air, waving and saying hi to people, clearing my head, having some time to think, to be in the moment. Now, if you had asked me a while ago, would I feel those things? No, I probably would have disagreed. But all I had to do was just get started. And a friend of mine helped me get started. And I am so grateful to her for that. Was I resistant? Oh, hell yeah. Was I running late some mornings and she got frustrated? Yep. But I committed to it. Now for me, and here are a couple tricks I want to talk about, I didn't want to let her down. And so that's what got me outside. And this was wintertime. We started it last year. So yeah. That's okay, because I knew I'd probably say no to myself before I would let her down and not show up to a commitment, because I am really big on follow through. If I commit to somebody, I'm going to make that happen. So know yourself and know what you need to get there. Another trick I was reading about today is if you really just can't muster the motivation to get started on that task, do something worse. Do something that you perceive is twice as hellish, twice as nasty, frustrating, time-consuming, disgusting, or whatever. It's hilarious, but think about it for a moment. You're going to really want to do that original thing. You're going to want to drop what you're doing, and you're going to say, okay, now I'm ready to do that thing, because now, relative to the crappy thing I just started doing, it don't seem so bad. It's hilarious to me, because that really tells us just how much of our stuff is based on perception. And yeah, perception is our reality, but is it the reality? Meaning, is it the reality that I would experience if I just did it? If I just got started? If I just began doing something, took the first step? And you know the deal. Chunk it down, write it down. What's step one? Look at the staircase, back it down to where you are. Do it backwards if you're not sure. I want to get there. How do I get back to where I'm standing right now? Then you'll know where to begin. Another thing is to begin where you can. If you really, really can't pull the trigger on the thing you'd love to tackle the most, do something you can see yourself doing today. Now, this is something you want to be careful with because you don't want to be avoiding. But maybe you need to clean your room before you feel empowered enough to sit down and write. I don't know. Start where you are. The other thing that Mel Robbins talks about in her 5-second rule book is do it immediately as soon as you have the idea before your brain talks you out of it and says, that's not going to be good. Oh, that's going to be hell, or that's going to be too hard to do, or you can't do that, or you crazy. Now, calculated risk taking here, of course, is implied, but do it and then see. Do a little bit. Do a little bit, step back from the painting and see if you want to change something. And that's the other thing we need to remember too. We can tweak things as we go. That gets you out of the paralysis of perfectionism. Just say, that's okay. Let me start here. If I need to make changes, I will. I can change things tomorrow. I can paint that room a different color if I hate it. I can be flexible. I can see how this goes. I may want to add some things as I go. What that does, like we've talked about before, is it gets you out of fear and out of looking at the power being all out there and bringing it within and saying, guess what? I get to choose. Isn't that amazing? I can choose and I can just figure things out as I go if need be. I can change my mind as I gather data, right? When you get started doing something, you get that experiential data. And sometimes we just got to put hands on till we realize, and that's okay. Just remember, nothing gets better until we start. Our health won't get better, we won't lose weight until we start eating better and get moving. Our finances won't improve until we get serious about making more money, saving more money, or investing more money. Our relationships certainly won't get better if we don't get better communication going, getting some boundaries happening, and connection skills started. Our homes will not be less stressful until we start tackling the clutter, the repairs, or the decorating. And most importantly, our self-esteem won't get better until we start honoring and making real what we really want to change. That's what today is about. Get started, make it real, make it reality. Honor yourself. We're not honoring ourselves talking about these wonderful goals. Yes, we need to do that, but it ain't real until it happens. You don't really love yourself until you start putting one foot in front of the other. You don't really love yourself until you take the risk of getting started. You don't really change your self-perception, especially if it had been damaged in the past with procrastination. In fact, we perpetuate it, don't we? We change our perception by doing differently. Because you can't argue with doing. Your subconscious cannot unring that bell. It happened. You did it. You feel pretty damn good about it. And now you're different. Now you're someone who makes things happen a little bit at a time, which is better. Gradual is better because guess what? It's more sustainable. It's more based in reality. And you're less likely to drop the ball. If I said I was going to walk 10 miles a day, that ain't going to happen every day. But if I can say I can walk several days a week, a couple miles, I'm doing that. And it's manageable and I can do it and it works in my life. So today we talked about making it real by just starting out. Not having it all figured out yet, and that's okay. Not waiting to get motivated either. Just beginning. We gain motivation this way. We feel empowered to do more. We start to feel better, more congruent, more confident, less stressed, less anxious, less irritable. And the rest of this month, we're going to take a deeper dive in how we get moving and how to stay moving on the goals that you have set for yourself. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's kickstart 2021 by doing some doing. May you stay healthy, number 1. Grounded, hold on to each other, and hold on to hope. Focus on the really cool things about you. And this week, I want you to do some quiet research on some cool things you're noticing about others around you. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. Sign up for the newsletter if you don't already get that. You'll get the bonus downloads and all the other cool info. All right. So, pay it forward. Keep focusing on you. Get started, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.